Today on Legally Yes, we break down everything you need to know in Diddy's shocking rape lawsuit and why it was resolved so quickly. Plus, Arnold Schwarzenegger is sued after a woman claims she was left permanently disabled following a car crash, and Nicolas Cage's family fights to see their grandchildren. We've got that plus so much more in today's Legally Yes. Hey everyone, Chrissy Garibaldi here with Neama Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi Neama, how are you?
Doing great, Christina. How are you?
Doing good. We have a big lawsuit to talk about this week, and this is what everybody's been talking about for the past few days. So Cassie has settled her lawsuit that accused ex-boyfriend Sean Diddy Combs of sexual assault and abuse. And so she said, I have decided to resolve this matter amicably on terms that I have some level of control. So news of the settlement came one day after the singer, whose real name is Cassandra Ventura, filed a lawsuit that claimed Diddy often tried to control her when they were dating by taking drugs, physically hurting her, and forcing her to have sex with male prostitutes on camera. She also claimed that Diddy forced his way into her home in 2018 and sexually assaulted her. Diddy, meanwhile, issued a statement of denial via his legal team that same day, saying that for the past 6 months, he has been subject to her persistent demand of $30 million under the threat of writing a damaging book about her relationship, which was unequivocally rejected as blatant blackmail. Her team claimed that she rejected an 8-figure offer from Diddy, and that was made as an attempt to silence her. So this lawsuit comes out, absolutely shocking. And then less than a day later, this was resolved. Why was this resolved so quickly?
Christina, this has to be one of the fastest settlements in American history. We're talking about one day. And the reason that this lawsuit was settled was probably the reason that it was filed in the first place. Cassie ran out of time. So some of these allegations are a little bit older in the statute of limitations that run. However, in New York, there was a law that opened the statute of limitations to file civil lawsuits and sexual assault cases. And that window closed this week on November 24th. So Cassie was up against the clock, and the parties really were unable to finalize their negotiations before that window was going to close. So she was forced to file a lawsuit. And when she did, I think Diddy saw the writing on the wall, realized that this is going to cost him a lot, not just in terms of legal fees, but his reputation as well. So he quickly settled it.
Interesting. So you probably think that this was going on behind the scenes for quite some time. I mean, he basically said that she was wanting money for a while. And, so this was probably being worked out for quite some time. And like you said, she kind of just ran out of time.
I think that's it. And again, obviously, these types of settlement negotiations, they happen behind closed doors. They're confidential. They're not public. But if you believe both sides, Diddy said Cassie was asking for $30 million. Cassie said that Diddy's lawyers made an 8-figure offer. Well, that's at least $10 million. So obviously that's a pretty big range. But if that's true, you're talking about the $10 to $30 million range. And for someone like Diddy, who's reportedly worth almost $1 billion, writing a check for 10 or even $20 million to save his reputation and avoid litigation with someone that he was in a relationship with for so long was probably the right move.
Right. I mean, does settling this so quickly, you see a lot of comments like settling this so quickly, is this an admission of guilt on Diddy's part? Potentially,
yes. But ultimately, there's going to be confidentiality. There's going to be non-disparagement provisions. No one's going to say anything. And as embarrassing as a settlement like this is, a public trial and having this drag on for months or years would have done far more harm to Diddy's reputation. I think, a year or two from now, people aren't even going to remember this settlement. But if we were going to trial in New York on this, everyone would be talking about Diddy.
Right. And obviously people are going to argue on the flip side because that's what people do. But I mean, reading this lawsuit, it's pretty horrific, like we said before, but some will argue that maybe she was just looking for money. Got to argue both sides, I guess.
Well, definitely. And obviously, Christina, we represent a lot of victims of sexual abuse, sexual violence. And, we hear the same thing. This is all about money. And oftentimes that's only justice you can get as a civil plaintiff. Now, reportedly, if you believe some of the media reports, NYPD is looking into Diddy. That would be a criminal case, obviously something separate. But that's really up to law enforcement and prosecutors that they want to file criminal charges. But if you're the victim of sexual assault, really the only remedy you have, if there are no criminal charges, is to file that civil lawsuit and to get civil damages. That's our system of justice.
Right. And like you said, this was kind of like running out of time. This was probably going on behind the scenes for a while. So were they probably almost at that final step of a settlement? And like, do you think that obviously she must have gotten that 8-figure payout? Do you think that she also had to sign an NDA not to write a book in the future? Maybe something like that as well?
I think so. Obviously, someone like Diddy isn't going to settle a case like this and have it be litigated, not in the courtroom, but the court of public opinion, right? He certainly wouldn't want to pay a victim and have her go on a book tour or on the talk show circuit. But like you said, it really is just the unique nature of the law. Let's not forget that Cassie and Diddy, they live in California. I mean, Cassie does split her time with the East Coast, apparently, but this is a case because of the way the laws work, may not have been able to be filed in California. New York might have been the only venue where Cassie could have filed. So they were really up against it. And I'm sure the negotiations were going back and forth for quite some time. And then maybe Cassie decided to walk away, file a lawsuit to show Diddy that she was serious and she meant business.
Right. I mean, obviously, this is just speculation. These are all allegations. We don't know if it actually happened. But if you were Diddy, would you ever be nervous if some of this were true, that other women may come forward now that Cassie kind of opened up the door?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what Me Too is all about, right? I mean, oftentimes when there is an abuser, and I'm not saying Diddy is one, but, rich and powerful men, they can be abusers. Oftentimes there's not just one victim that they abuse. There's others. Now, also we know that sexual assault tends to be an underreported crime. There's many victims in this country that don't come forward because they don't want to be re-victimized in a public way. And just like there's a lot of things that have been said about Diddy, there's a lot of bad things that were said about Cassie on social media, saying that this is just all about money and this is all fake, and people love celebrities. So it's not easy to come forward, but I really commend the women who are true victims that do, because it does empower others to do the same.
Definitely. Like you said, fastest settlement probably in history, but really was. All right, moving on to some other news. A woman filed a lawsuit against Arnold Schwarzenegger after she was left permanently disabled from a January 2022 car crash she claims he caused. So according to the court documents obtained by the Blast, the plaintiff claims that she was left, like I said, permanently disabled after the multi-car accident. She alleges in the suit that she was required to and did employ physicians and surgeons to examine, treat, and care for her. She is looking for the actor to cover the general damages, all medical and incidental expenses, all loss of earnings, and all damages to her car. So in this case, do we think Arnold will have to pay up?
I don't think so. This is just an insurance case. So, we talked about why lawsuits are filed, right? And in this particular case, whenever there's a car accident, I'm sure Arnold Schwarzenegger has insurance. There's a whole process where whoever's injured, they have to deal with the insurance adjuster. And if the insurance adjuster makes a lowball offer, doesn't pay what the injured victim believes that he or she is owed, that's when a lawsuit is filed. But lawsuits in car accident cases aren't too common. Usually about 80 to 90% of the time, the cases do resolve. There's a whole system of insurance and adjusters and claims that handle these types of claims. But if they make lowball offers, lawsuits are filed. But I don't expect a case like this to go all the way to trial. Sometimes when a lawsuit is filed, you might get the adjuster on the case, or you might get a more senior adjuster or a lawyer that's going to step in, going to pay the money and settle the claim. And that's what I fully expect to happen here.
All right. Well, moving on. This is an interesting story. So Nicolas Cage and his ex, Christina Fulton, haven't met their 3-year-old twin granddaughters because of a nightmare feud with their former daughter-in-law. So their former daughter-in-law, who is married to the former couple's son, Weston, is being sued by both Weston and Nicolas Cage's ex, Christina, for defamation. So in the separate lawsuits obtained by Page Six, both the mother and son duo accused the ex-wife of embezzling $100,000 and requesting a fraudulent restraining order that prevented Christina and her family from seeing Weston's daughters. In his own lawsuit, Weston alleges his estranged wife took advantage of him while he was recovering from mental health issues and accused her of spreading malicious lies in retaliation for his divorce filing. So do you think that a judge will allow visitation rights to the family? It seems like this is getting very messy.
It is getting messy. And in most states, including California, it's hard for grandparents to get visitation rights over the parents' objection. So we got to kind of analyze this. If Weston does have, physical custody of the children, of course he can invite his parents over, Nicholas and Christina, right? Their grandparents. But if he does not, and if his ex has sole physical custody, it's going to be hard for Nicholas and Christina to get visitation rights over their former daughter-in-law's objection. Usually parents have the right to control who sees the child. Of course, the standard is always best interest of the child. If it is the best interest of the child to see the grandparents, judges may order some grandparent visitation, but usually parents, whether they're married or not, whoever has custody, has the right to control who their children see. They can even exclude family members or grandparents if necessary.
Interesting. So will the mother of the children have to prove why the father and the grandmother cannot be involved in their lives, or does she even have to go that far?
It's actually the opposite. The grandparents, so in this case, Nicholas and Christina will have to prove to the court why it's in the best interest of the child for them to have visitation rights. The burden is on them because they're the ones that are trying to do something that typically is not ordered. So mom doesn't have to do anything. It's up to Nicholas and Christina to go to court and get a court to order visitation. Otherwise, they have no rights.
Interesting. All right. Lots of interesting stories this week. Neama, thank you so much as always.
Thanks, Christina. Have a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. You too. See you next week. For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.